We start in 1928 over in the Indian mountains, as a lone hiker, who looks suspiciously like Ted from Bill and Ted and also the One, fondles a giant glowing egg he finds in the ice, before it takes a sample of his DNA and sods off back to space. Now in the present day, or 2008 I guess, Dr. Helen Benson establishes her credentials as a sciencey type nerd and specialising in micro and astrobiology. Turns out she's also a single stepmom to an obnoxious kid called Jacob, and whose dad died the previous year. Naturally, he keeps calling her by her Christian name and making her life hard by refusing to eat vegetables. Until the cops arrive outside her gaff and effectively kidnap the broad. As there ain't much time to explain and she needs to go with them stat. Because national security, bro. She's soon taken off to a military base where she joins hundreds of other scientists gathered from all around the world and specialising in different fields and skills. And before you know it, John Hamm then turns up and gives them the lowdown in the form of a giant expo dump. Apparently, a mysterious object is rapidly moving toward Earth and intelligently changing directions and shit. And at current velocity will smash into the planet harder than my plops smash into the bog bowl on Taco Bell night. And much like my plops on Taco Bell night, it has the potential to destroy all life on Earth. Oh, and they also only have 78 minutes to live because reasons. Helen then basically says goodbye to her phony fakey kid on her mobile, which she totally somehow smuggled into the super secure military base. But because she can't disclose classified information about how he's barely an hour away from oblivion, he thinks she's just being overbearing as usual, and casually just says, I have to go have my dinner now, and totally not eat my vegetables, bitch. And just leaving her crying in the box like a right emo cack. Shortly after, the object arrives in Earth's atmosphere, where we see it's the same giant glowing ball from the opening sequence. And naturally, it starts to land in the middle of Manhattan as it suddenly gets very windy. And we're talking windier than an Eric Swalwell interview.
Chris, so far, the evidence is uncontradicted that the president used taxpayer dollars to ask the Ukrainians to help him cheat an election.
Disgusting!
And the scientists promptly approach the sphere, whilst the military goons all take up defensive positions around it. Suddenly, a being comes out of the ball, and because the US military is full of trigger-happy psycho nutjobs, one of the dopey fuckers goes and shoots the thing, which naturally triggers a giant metal man to come out of the egg to smack a bitch up. This metallic Cyclops fella then causes mass carnage by shutting down the Wi-Fi and disabling the 4G networks, so now TikTok nurses can't do silly dances in front of dying patients in NHS hospitals.
Lame.
Oh, and he also shuts down all the tanks, cars and guns. Anyway, this Iron Giant fella, who seems to be made of dodgy CGI, is totally about to smoke their asses. Until the dying alien, who just took a cap in his ass, tells it to stop doing all these bad things in a foreign language. So it promptly then shuts off and has a little sleep, whilst they rush the wounded space alien into surgery. Hilariously, nobody knows what to give it, nor can they find a vein for fluids for love nor money. So naturally, a random ginger shocks his ass with a defibrillator and gets himself blown back real good and brava. So a surgeon is then called to extract the bullet, and as he does so, all the creature's grey skin seems to fall away, like some sort of weird-ass mucousy shell, which is apparently like a placenta and shit. And turns out they've gone and shot up some Voldemort-looking extraterrestrial bloke. A few hours later, and the guy wakes up panicking like an elderly granddad stuck in a bath, but somehow knowing perfect English.
Okay.
So they promptly calm him down by saying, relax bro, because you're totally safe here at this ultra paranoid American military base where everyone is on high alert and just itching to neutralise the alien threat. Meanwhile, the Secretary of Defence, and who's played here by that bird what loves smashing ankles in a previous life, finds out that the sphere in Manhattan isn't the only one, and there's now a fuck ton of the things appearing all over the world. And apparently, these balls have taken down their defence satellites and accessed their super secure mainframe, so now they know everything about them. Like what they had for breakfast, or what kind of kinky porn they're into and shit. Oh, and also had to disable missile defences.
Oh shit, not good.
Anyway, the scientists then reveal that in order to survive here, he probably had to be born in human form. Hence why he was wrapped in placenta jelly and why he came out of a giant testicle. Because science, bro. And the DNA necessary to pull this off was likely gathered years before. And my guess is from that Ted dude who was hiking in the Indian mountains on a totally excellent adventure in the opening sequence. As he regains consciousness though, they all rush in to question the poor chap with one facial expression. Like presumably, how have you just been born with a face full of Botox? But first he has to go full Donald Trump by drinking a glass of water with 2 hands.
I'm a very stable genius.
Eventually, he says his name is Klaatu, which I'm assuming is African in origin and is just short for Bumbaclaw. Or Samshi. Anyway, this Bumbaclaw fella says he represents a group of civilizations, and this alien ET literally wants to be taken to their leader. But the Defence Secretary says they ain't got the budget to cast an actor to play the president, so she'll totally have to do. But he don't want to talk to no stinking secretary what loves to smash ankles in a previous life, and so they quickly sedate him and regroup. Turns out the SecDef is totally paranoid and worries about humans being enslaved and conquered by these things. So naturally wants to strike first, to avoid totally becoming slavey bitch cucks like the Native Americans, and also the poor saps what had to build all the pyramids and shit. So her plan is to drug him up to find out his intentions. And although John Hamm objects, Dr. Helen takes one for the team and totally volunteers, and super secretly swaps the Veritaserum shit for simple sailing, and then tells him to run the first chance he gets. So he's then taken off to do a lie detector test, but gets pretty sick of this prick's tedious questions, and so makes him spaz out before totally nigging his suit, which luckily just so happens to fit him rather perfectly. Result. After easily escaping the super secure military base, he goes to a local train station and totally steals a sandwich from a vending machine, whilst callously just staring at a dying man right in front of him and never once changing his facial expression. And before he can spell karma, his bullet wound starts bleeding, and so he calls up Dr. Helen to come give him some special ointment, though fuck knows how he knows what her home phone number is. She then picks him up and gives him some special gel for his scabs, which then heal up almost instantaneously, whilst her phony fakey miserable son Jacob sits in the back, with a bigger attitude problem than that Frosk bird on G4 TV. Elsewhere, Teabag from Prison Break has turned his life around, and now seems to be head of the US Army. Though he seems pretty incompetent at his new job, given he fires a bunch of drones at the Iron Giant thing what only activates around acts of violence. And they end up being taken out of his control and smashed into his own fucking tanks. Lol, what a wally. Back with the protagonists, Jacob sits in the rear of the car and whines on about his dead dad, and how he totally wouldn't have pussied out like they just have, and would have totally stayed and fought these unkillable alien beings from outer space. But even Boomba says you can't run or fight from what's coming, so sit your ass down and shut up about it already. Then they pull into a McDonald's, with the most glaring product placement since that absurdly positioned Starbucks coffee cup in Game of Thrones at one time. Whilst Dr. Helen then expo dumps her family history and how her dead husband got himself blown up in the army, despite being an engineer and not even a soldier. She then explains how Jacob's birth mum also died because reasons. So basically, the kid would be an orphan if she don't stick around every evening and cook him up vegetables what he don't even eat. Anyway, she then asks him why he's here, and he says because he totally loves the dollar menu at this place. So she just says, no, not McDonald's, you silly prick. I meant here on this planet and stuff. And he just says that he's totally here to save the Earth, but doesn't say from what. Shortly thereafter, he meets up with an old Japanese fella, who turns out to also be an alien, and who's been here on an assignment for 70 years. And unfortunately, he reckons we're all terrible people who can't be saved or changed. But then goes on to say how he's also seen a different side to us, now also seems to love us and thinks we can change after all. Man, this guy flips his opinions quicker than a liberal changes their hair colour. Elsewhere, Teabag from Prison Break has learned his lesson about aggressively attacking the giant robot what only reacts to violence, and instead decides to cage it up and transport it back to a secure lab in the middle of nowhere, and is therefore determined not to fly over any blue cities at all costs.
Oh, hell no!
Dr. Helen then drives them into the woods, where Boomba promptly walks on water and then summons even more testicle things from all over the world. Once finished, Jacob realises that he's totally one of them alien fellas, before being told to shut up and get back in the car like a rye melt.
Oh, that's cold.
Then Dr. Helen asks him why he never changes his facial expression. And also what the fuck is going on yet again. And this time, he totally comes clean. Mainly by going all Grumpy Thunberg and crying about how the planet is totally dying. And
how dare you!
Lot keep polluting its beauty. And also making it hotter than a young Holly Willoughby eating an ice cream.
I like it a lot.
Naturally, she's totally shell-shocked. And he goes on to explain in further detail about how he's there to save the planet from the humans. Because we're essentially a disease what totally needs to be wiped out so that Earth can heal and carry on without us. Because we're essentially carbon-based life forms who likes to eat loads of beans and do a bunch of toxic farts. Which is totally not good for the ozone and shit. So it's either murder us all or individually sew up our arseholes so we can't do smelly body burps ever again. Or some shit. So she pleads with him to have a bit of mercy because we can totally change, bro. But he just says, it's too late, girl, and you had your chance, but you all kept eating those fucking beans. Anyway, then a cop appears from straight out of nowhere. So naturally, Boomba Clark charges up their car with his bare hands, whilst casually just stating that the pain will only last a moment, before proceeding to crush the guy's pelvis flatter than Prince Elrond's face. But magically, he brings him back to life. Mainly by giving him a little scalp massage and then making him spaz out on the floor and shit.
Okay.
Hilariously, he says he killed him but brought him back because he totally meant him no harm. Even though he just set off the equivalent of a world-ending nuke, which is going to kill the lot of them anyway. And although she couldn't previously tell by his face, she now realises that he does seem to care about us a little, and probably doesn't want to murder the entire planet deep down. And so takes him to a proper leader to try and convince him that they're all totally worth saving, bro. So she promptly drives him to her mentor's house, a Nobel Prize winner who looks suspiciously like that 40 Towers geezer and what loved doing Nazi goose steps back in the day. And after solving some vague and random equation on a chalkboard which somehow confirms to him that he's indeed an alien, John Cleese says he has so many questions he wants to ask the bona fide ET. Presumably, like why does your face never move? And what the fuck were you even thinking doing a Matrix 4?
That's a great question. I've been wondering that myself.
Meanwhile, back at the secret military base in Virginia, they've transported the Iron Giant bloke into a secure facility. Apparently, they've named him Gort, which stands for Genetically Organised Robotic Technology. And not like I initially thought, giant one-eyed robot twat. And before you can say, why would you have the monster who shoots laser beams from his eyes facing right into your fucking control room? We cut back to the plucky protagonist, where John Cleese promptly asks Clarkface about his people's history and shit. And he says that their son was dying, so they had to evolve to survive. And Cleese just says, well that's what's happening to us now, so let us do that evolving thing so you don't have to annihilate us, bro. And his face just falls at essentially being outsmarted by a simple human what loves silly and offensive walks. Though I mean that figuratively, because you'd never know it from his perpetually blank expression. Suddenly though, 3 military helicopters appear, because turns out Jacob totally called them and snitched on their position, because he's still pretty bitter about his dead dad and is totally on the side of the army, and shockingly not the murderous alien who keeps murdering people but then bringing them back to life because reasons. And before they can say, I knew we should have dumped this little traitor back in the first act, his phony fakey mum bird gets snatched up worse than a little blonde girl on holiday in Portugal, and promptly taken away into the night like a riot chump. The stiff alien with one facial expression then smashes 2 choppers into each other, despite having a totally human body yet can somehow control tech with his mind because... reasons. Anyway, shortly after, Jacob almost dies after falling off a small bridge, but is soon saved by the monosyllabic alien fella with one facial expression what he just totally betrayed, and then cheekily asks if he can get him home, because he's more lost and confused than John Fetterman on a good day. Elsewhere, Dr. Helen is taken into the SecDef's custody again, whilst the lab tech tries to manually fix a drill which has broken off inside Gort's gimp chamber. Unfortunately, his suit begins to melt, as do his tools, before he starts to bleed from every orifice, and it looks like it's curtains for the random red shirt with no name who's just appeared out of nowhere to say hi and then die. The windows then start cracking as Gort gives a little wave, revealing that his hands are now free from the chains, as he randomly turns into a swarm of nanomachine tiny bug things, which then become a grey mass and eats everything in its path. But before you can say,
Oh, no, not the beast! Not the beast! Ah! Open my eyes! My eyes! Ah!
the fuckers have destroyed more public property than a mostly peaceful protest over in Portland.
Oh shit, not good.
Unable to stop it by conventional means, the sec-deaf woman, what once loved inflicting a bit of misery, allows Dr. Helen to go try talking the alien out of turning all living things on Earth into corroded dust. And before you can say, no, seriously, where the frig is the fucking president in all this, we cut back to Boomba and his little Clark, where they promptly phone up Dr. Helen to tell him to meet them at a very special place nearby. On the way over, Jacob tells the expressionless alien that he's totally sorry for dobbing him in and that he's actually not that bad, and has totally learned his lesson about not trying to kill things on sight just because they look dangerous and scary. Well, except hairy house spiders, those bastards you can burn with fire. And perhaps this Klaatu bloke is learning something from him too, and presumably about how to be an insufferable child actor who's in dire need of a hairbrush.
Oh, good lord!
Anyway, turns out the special meeting place is his dead dad's grave, and he totally wants the alien to bring him back to life, much like he did with all those other fellas what he made spaz out and die before resurrecting with a fancy head massage. But he says even he don't have the power to bring back skeletons, so he should just accept that his daddy's gone and he's just now another statistic of a fatherless black boy.
Damn!
And poor Jacob bursts into tears when he goes on to tell him how his father has totally been recycled by the universe and shit, before Dr. Helen appears, who properly comforts her distressed stepson, and they both proceed to blub into each other's arms like a right pair of melts, whilst Boomba over here and pretty much blowing into his hanky too. Or maybe he's just constipated. Gah, the acting is so good I can't really tell. Suddenly though, the deadly swarm appears, and he doesn't quite know if they can stop it now. And although he can try, it would quote come at a price. And they just say that's fine, bro, as long as that price ain't Katie. So they speed off toward the egg sphere testicle thing, until their motor gets blown up and the swarm descends upon them.
We're cutting it close.
Now cut off from the sphere, they hide in a nearby tunnel, before Jacob starts bleeding and totally collapses. Apparently, he has some bugs inside him and is totally dying. And before he can say, for the love of God, someone get this lad some ivermectin, it's also the first time that Jacob calls her mummy. But before she can say, about fucking time, you ungrateful little squirrel, it turns out that she's dying too, but she still wants him to save her boy. And rather touched by this, Clark face draws all the little robotic bug things out of their veins and directly into him, and thereby saving all their lives and fixing their runny nosebleeds and shit. He then realises that Professor Cleese was totally right, and Batty Fart then goes full QAnon and says that only at the precipice do we find the will to change, before running over to the egg and promptly getting killed by a bunch of his own microbots. Then it rains robotic bug corpses as the Earth totally stands still and quiet. And we end on the image of the sphere ascending and sodding off back home, before Dr. Helen states that it's leaving. But Jacob quickly shows off his young virtue signalling abilities by saying no, he's leaving, Mum, and you better get the pronouns correct, love. So the spheres totally ascend and return to their own planet, after one alien feels a bit sorry for a quasi-orphan kid and decides to totally risk letting their species burn down the Earth and shit. And that's it, that's the movie. Though my favourite part was when that John Hamm fella turned to Dr. Helen during the surgery scene, and unironically asked if she can explain any of this utterly mental shit. And she's just like, nah, bro, it's a legit extraterrestrial for fuck's sake, and I can't really explain human-looking aliens like this fella, Elon Musk or current day Madonna. So shut up about it already. Anyway, that's the plot and that's your lot. Consider ringing that bell thing so you don't miss any future recaps. Tell me if you like this flick in the comments if you have time, and I'll see you in the next one.